In the meanwhile, I want to talk a little bit about the housing crisis. So, by the way, this is an international issue. Many people know about the housing crises that are occurring in America, specifically in places like California and New York. But the type of housing crisis that I'm going to talk about is actually endemic, more or less, to the entire world. So, the I want to start with what the housing crisis is. So the housing crisis is twofold. One is that rents are very high, and people can't afford them, and so people are becoming houseless or unhoused. Um, so actually, I'm going to pause right here and make a little bit of a distinction. To me personally, and I've talked to people who disagree, but personally, I believe that there's a significant difference between houseless and unhoused and homeless. Okay, so the reason I say this, so to me, unhoused or houseless means that you don't have a roof over your head, or you don't have a place that you can call your own. You don't have somewhere to go at the end of the day. And that doesn't include shelters, but I mean a place that you actually spend that you spend time in, that you can customize, that you can do things to, right? So I rent a house, but obviously I put things up on the walls that I can take down, right? This is a house. It's not necessarily a home. I don't own it, okay? So that brings me to what I think homelessness is. So homelessness, in my opinion, is the inability for someone to have a place that they want to make their permanent living situation, or that they own, right? So you can rent a place and have it be your permanent place of residence. That's fine. I think that would be a home. But where you just have a roof over your head, even if you like that roof over your head, and look, I love living in this house, but it doesn't change the fact that I don't own this house and we're not planning to live here forever, right? If you have a place that you're comfortable living forever, or you have a place that you can own, that is what I think as having a home. Right now, I'd say I have a house. I have a roof over my head. It's a nice roof, but it is more or less just a roof over my head. And I call it home to other people in the colloquial sense that I feel at home here, but there is a transigence about this house in my mind. I will not live here forever, right? Once you get to a place where you feel that is no longer transactional, that's no longer an in-between, that I think is a home. So those kind of definitions, if you will, aside, let's get back to the issue here. So the first issue, as I mentioned, is rents are too high and lots of people are houseless or unhoused. And the second issue is there is reduced stock of houses to purchase. So people who can afford houses aren't necessarily able to get them because either they're being purchased by other people or because they're being purchased and renovated for the purpose of renting them, again, at rents that are too high and causing them house people. And by the way, this also causes people who could afford homes, who could build generational wealth, who could build wealth into a place where they are instead building wealth for the capitalist class, who is able to collect rents, right, and not particularly do anything for those, or collect rents at a high enough profit that they can sit tidy and not have to do labor work, like you and I do. So the origin of these problems around the world are pretty much the same thing. So very wealthy people have found that it is very easy to purchase houses in cash, and people don't ask a lot of questions about where the cash comes from. It's just, So what happens is very wealthy individuals and developers, they buy either one house, they buy multiple houses, or they build tons of houses, and they then sell those houses, they speculate on those houses to other developers who will then rent those houses out. And there's a lot of money to be made that way, but also it launders money. It cleans the money. So when the money is then sold, if it's then sold again, that money that comes back to them, more or less clean money, right? So what's happening in a lot of places is that, so for example, very wealthy people will buy up huge amounts of houses or homes that they never intend to live in. So this was a huge problem in London a bunch of years ago. I think it's still a problem where Saudi royalty were buying a dozen condos and the penthouse of multiple very expensive high rises, but they buy them for much more than they were worth. So what this was doing was it was causing the housing prices around them to increase because of the perception of the heightened demand, and also because there were fewer condos to sell, which lowered the supply with either demand increasing artificially or staying the same naturally. The price was going to go up. So this isn't just happening in London. Of course, it's happening in all sorts of places around the world. New York City is actually a great place. It's a great American example of where this is happening, where very wealthy people from abroad are buying expensive condos for more than they're worth, and then and then not living in them. Right? They stay vacant. Either they get rented out or they stay vacant. Most of the time, they're staying vacant. So we have all these houses that are not being used by people who need them, but are also essentially just serving as little money pits for very wealthy people who can then salvage their money later by selling them to someone else. But what it does is, as the supply decreases, as the demand stays the same or increases artificially, what ends up happening is that regular people are priced out of these homes. So they're having to move farther and farther away from where they want to live, or they have to live in places that they don't want to live necessarily because they can't find an affordable home where they do want to live. And this kind of cycle has created this incredible situation where we have about 6 houses. This is just the United States, by the way. I don't know how this is in other countries, but we have about 6 houses per unhoused individual in America. So obviously there are solutions out there to this. One is to create vacancy taxes. One is to require people to live in places for a certain amount of time per year that they own, and things like, or else the state can take them. There's eminent domain, which is the legal operation by which a city, state, locality, whatever, seizes property for its market, seizes property, pays the owner its market value, and then redistributes it as it sees fit. But the thing is, there has to be something done, because we are increasingly in a place where we have more and more unhoused individuals and more of these luxury homes or luxury condos that cannot be sold or rented to people because the rent is too high, or the price of the house is too high, or even when the price of the house is acceptable, individuals who think they can make a profit off of these houses by renting them can buy them up in cash, right? So, and of course, this creates an interesting market dynamic as well, because because the market will always move towards more liquid currency. So what I mean when I say liquid currency is, if a currency is considered liquid when it is easily movable, right? So it's or can be used immediately. It has what's called never mind. So anyway, so the easier that money is to move, the more liquid it is, right? So if you have an asset, say this island is an asset that's worth, let's just say $200. I don't know what it costs, but let's just say it's worth $200, right? This is a non-liquid asset. I have to sell this to someone to get cash so that I can do other things with it. No one's going to trade me this for my grocery bill, right? I need cash to do that because that's the medium of exchange. So because the market will always favor more liquid cash, if you're paying a down payment on a mortgage, which is, of course, a loan that comes in that you pay back over a period of time, it is going to be easier for someone to receive cash for an asset than it is to wait for the bank to give you the mortgage and to figure out all the rates and sign all the paperwork. So the market will always tend in that direction. And because the market trends in that direction, anyone who is wealthy enough to buy in cash is always going to outperform people who cannot buy in cash. So even where houses can be purchased by individuals with mortgages, if the house is desirable for renting, which, you know, depending on a variety of factors, if a house is usable for renting, useful for renting, then a developer can come in and pay cash for it, and even if they're offering less than you, they will beat you out as a regular individual who's buying a home, because you have to use a mortgage, which is more complicated than just someone handing a briefcase of cash to the other person. So hopefully we can move some policy around to do this, but this is an international problem. This is a money laundering problem, and we need some way to tax these individuals and tax corporations to make sure that there is not a situation like in the United States where we have 6 houses for every one unhoused person.